That was out of life. It was gut-wrenching, some of it.
I really thought they would have their little run on the radio and then we'd never hear from them again.
Congratulations on the Broadway success of Beautiful.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful tribute.
Yeah.
Beautiful, well-received, people love it. It's joyful.
It is.
Does Beautiful give a true-to-life portrayal of your days as songwriters working alongside Carole King and Jerry Goffin?
You know, Beautiful, for dramatic reasons, collapses some of the things that happened, but it's really based on truth, and the competitiveness was fierce, as well as the love that we had for each other. And we even used to take vacations together so we'd know the other couple wasn't writing while we
And
were
also
gone.
we enjoyed going
And
on
we
vacation.
loved them. They were so much fun. And Beautiful is the gift that keeps on giving. It's on Broadway, it's in London, it's on national tour, it's opening in Australia and Japan. So it touches a universal chord, just like Carole and her songs. Carole, with us, is our longest friendship ever. And so we've known her since she's 17 years old. We share each other's history so much.
Carole was there, when we got
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
The Icon Award, yes.
And she was crying, by the way, I was told, when they were doing our songs.
Well, I cry when they do her songs because I didn't write them. But I think she was crying for a different reason.
Could you ever have imagined sitting and writing, vacationing, that many years later we'd be sitting here today talking about what you created as songwriters?
I really thought they would have their little run on the radio and then we'd never hear from them again.
Yeah.
So it kind of freed me up to be a little experimental because I thought it was only the kids were listening and nobody would listen after that.
What was it like when you heard your first song on the radio? Do you remember? What was it?
I had a song called A Little Less Talk and a Little More Action. In about
Long before we knew each other.
Yeah, this is about 1958. I can't believe it. I was 2 years old when I started. And,
He's a child
to the radio.
and it was some small label, Probably gangsters probably owned the label, But I heard it that one time,
Cynthia, what was when you first heard it?
The very first time I ever heard a song of mine on the air was, I was the B-side of a record, but I knew the disc jockey, so he turned it over, and he's the only one who ever played my side, ever.
As an A-side.
No, he just played it that once so I could hear it.
And what was it? What was the song?
Barry was the A-side. It was the Teddy Randazzo record.
Of Pagliacci, but it was called
The Way of a Clown was his side, and my side was something I'd written with the singer who sang at Teddy Randazzo, and it was called Cherie.
And I imagine it never gets old listening to your songs on radio.
Sometimes we can hear an old song on the radio, really old, and we can't remember if we wrote it or Carole and Jerry wrote it. That happened once in a while,
But there was one time when we were going on vacation together. We were driving up to Vermont, I think it was,
New Hampshire,
and we had a contest of who could hear more of their songs on the radio. And Carole ended up winning.
Yeah, at the last minute.
Because at the last minute, when we pulled into New York, we heard Crying in the Rain.
The Everly Brothers record.
Yeah.
Tell me how life was then at the Brill Building.
Well, we were at 1650.
Yeah.
Broadway?
Yeah,
Broadway,
which was, as Carole calls it, the un-Brill Building. It was very competitive. It was very crazy. It was full of life and full of energy. It was full of testosterone and hormones.
And in a way, it got in the way of living our lives. That was our lives.
That was our lives.
Writing
and
songs.
one of the reasons I think that Carole and Jerry were our best friends was that nobody else could understand this life we were living. I mean, we would write during the day, cut demos at night. We never made a date with anybody, another couple, to see them because we never knew what we'd be doing.
Very rarely, yeah. That was our life. It was gut-wrenching, some of it, But we had good times too, but not generally,
You've written so many wonderful songs. Barry, what's your favorite and why?
Probably for that period, You've Lost a Love and Feeling, of course. I wrote a song by myself that I happen to love. It's a song called There's No Easy Way to Break Somebody's Heart. Or you could call it There's No Easy Way. And James Ingram recorded it. It wasn't a big hit, but...
It was a semi-hit.
Semi-hit, yeah. I just liked the lyric. I mean, besides the melody, but lyrically, it was really a good lyric. I remember the Bergmans, I was in one of the studios, and the Bergmans were there, and they knocked on the window, and I could see how much respect they had for my lyric, and which really made me feel great. Oh yeah, I know it. It made me feel really, really great. I don't think I ever told you that.
No.
Yeah.
See, I learn something new every day. It's only been 54 years, and still he can surprise me.
Cynthia, what was your favorite and why?
I think my favorite lyric is Just Once. The reason is that I think almost every other song that anyone has written has been an idea that's been written before. You know, you love me, you don't love me, I love you, you don't love me. But Just Once, about two people who can't seem to get the relationship together, even though they're crazy about each other, is something that I don't think anyone ever wrote about before. So I really feel it was an original idea, and that makes it my favorite.
You know, I loved On Broadway. Cynthia and I had originally written it by ourselves. We wrote it for a girls group. I think Carol and Cherie were cutting the cookies. They asked us to, which they had never done before, and they asked us to write something. So we wrote On Broadway, but we wrote it from a different perspective.
Well, the general idea was that it was a young girl wanting to get to Broadway, wanting to get out of a small town, wanting to make her mark that way.
Yeah, and then I heard from Mike Stoll, I didn't realize it happened back then, that Donnie Kirshner went to them, to Lieber and Stoller. He heard they were cutting the Drifters, and they said, you know, Barry and Cynthia have this song, it doesn't quite make it yet. Why don't you guys see if you could write with them? So we went there. We thought we played them the song, and we thought, and they liked it very much, you know. And they said, but you know, you got to have a man's perspective, a male perspective. And they said, but you know, you could either go home and write it yourselves or write it with us. Little did we know that was their plan.
Yes.
I found that out 20 years later.
Yes.
We jumped at that because they're great, and writing with them. Especially Jerry Lieber, the way he threw out lines, it was fantastic. It was a whole other way of writing.
Has there ever been an artist that's done something with your song that has really surprised you?
Well, but you know what surprised me? We got to get out of this place. My demo, I made a demo that was made basically for the Righteous Brothers, so it had that feeling to it. And it ended up, without us knowing it, being recorded by the Animals. And, you know, it was so different than my demo, but it was so right for the Animals. So it worked in that sense, but I had to get used to it.
Really?
Yeah. I had to get used to
Well, also Barry's record of that song was about to come out
it.
on Redbird. George Goldner was putting the record.
That same song was
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Oh, so what happened when you?
Well,
We didn't-
Barry's record was pulled.
It was pulled, yeah.
I mean,
couldn't do
Donnie
it.
said, I have good news and bad news.
Yeah,
you know?
right. I could have been a star. What's the story?
But we were discussing this the other day. I think if he had been, we would no longer be married.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Yeah,
So it worked out for me.
yeah.
I just have one last question. You've been with BMI for over 5 decades.
Yeah.
What does the relationship through all these years mean to the two of you?
It's a part of us. It's like a marriage, you know?
I mean, talk about family. I mean,
Yes,
that's
it's
a
family.
really family. That really is
Yeah.
family. I mean, 50 years.
Yeah.
Got to be family, you know.
And although we separated, we never separated from
you.
BMI.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel the same.
Yeah.
You know,
And really, Barbara, without blowing smoke, you were really a very big part of it. You really were. I mean, we always felt that you were there. You
Understood.
Understood. You were a friend.
Supported. And
Yeah, and I'm just saying that, you know.
thank you. You are idols to me, and I
thanks.
treasure being here. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's great. Thanks, Mom.
our pleasure.